Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Commander's Forge. I am Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic Commander and anything else as I try and bring my mental health out of the dumpster. Now, I did have to take a couple week break from the podcast, mostly because I was having an issue with my recording setup where there was a hum that was coming through all of my recordings. So I went about doing troubleshooting and found out it was the headphones. So I went then about finding a replacement pair of headphones that weren't going to, cost $200 because good headphones are expensive. But I got some new ones. We're finally trying them out. But on top of that, I have not been paying attention to any Magic news for the most part. I've been just kind of head down, getting through work. And, this last weekend was completely taken over by Pokemon Scarlet, which was a good escape from everything else. So, I don't really have a whole lot to say about what's going on in Magic at the moment because I'm not entirely sure what's going on with Magic at the moment. It just seemed like it was a good time for me to step away. Mostly because I don't care about their $1,000 proxies. I'm just going to throw it out there right now. It's not something I'm interested in, and for the most part, the most Magic I've done in the last month was the Brothers War pre-release, and that's about it. I haven't really been buying stuff because I've got other issues I've been taking care of, the headphones included, and I just don't have the time or the money right now. So, yeah, that's just kind of a quick update on what's been going on. And, moving forward, I will get back into the swing of, everything. And, yeah, that's about all I got. I'll figure out something to do in the second half. Until then, I will be right back. I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Patreon. I know times are hard for everybody, and I know it isn't easy to shuffle around bills and stuff. Believe me, I know that. But if you would like to help support the podcast, you can find the links to my Patreon in my link tree, which is always put into the description of either the video or the audio, wherever you're listening to it. It would really mean the world to me. Honestly, I'm just struggling to make ends meet most weeks. But that's it. That's all. If you want to help, the links will be where you can find them. Alright, and welcome back. Now, not only did I take a step away from recording because of my setup being messed up, I also wasn't really playing Magic during that time. So, now that gave me a bunch of time to kind of sit down and look at decks, and I ended up changing up a deck that was just kind of getting a little stale, and that was my Niv-Mizzet Reborn deck. So, as I was sitting there looking at it, I was like, there's gotta be a way I can just change this into something that's a little more my style. And so I settled on Jodah the Unifier, which is a 5/5 human wizard for WUBRG. Legendary creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. And whenever you cast a legendary spell from your hand, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a legendary non-land card with a lesser mana value. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So that is a long-winded way to say it has Legendary Cascade. So I ended up swapping to Jodah, and in the course of swapping, I was thinking, Niv Mizzet had Jegantha as a companion. How many cards out of this pile that I kind of curated would I have to cut to keep Jegantha as a companion? And the answer was like 6. So I ended up keeping that restriction so that I could continue to run Jegantha the Wellspring, which is a 5/5 elemental elk for 4 and then a hybrid Gruul. Its companion clause is no card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana cost. And then it can tap to add WUBRG. This mana can't be spent to pay generic mana costs. So right off the bat, we're still keeping that restriction. And the one restriction that we did lax was in the Niv Mizzet deck, any of my non-land permanents that were artifacts also had to fall in the 2 colors of a guild so that I could grab it with Niv Mizzet's ability. I no longer had that restriction, and that kind of changed up mostly how I did like my mana stuff. Because in Niv Mizzet, the main mana rocks were the guild signets. Where in this one, I have your regular Soul Ring, and I have a Chromatic Lantern, which is, the Soul Ring's 1 mana, taps for 2 mana, and the Chromatic Lantern is 3 mana, and it gives your lands the ability to tap for 1 mana of any color, and it itself taps for 1 mana of any color. But I could lean more into some of the green mana ramp. Things like Bushwhack, which is a single green mana for a sorcery. You can either search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. Or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Both of those modes are decent to either get a land, or say you have Jodah out with like 6 other things and your creatures are huge, just to fight something. And then we have our like basic green ramp package with stuff like Farseek, 1 in the green, sorcery, search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. Kodama's Reach and Cultivate, which are clones of each other. They're both sorceries. They search your library for 2 basic lands. You reveal 1 and put the other one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand. And that kind of opened up a little bit in the fact that I didn't have to stick to 2 colors. So I actually have, monocolor stuff in here, and I have 3 color stuff, and I have 5 color stuff. So I have things like, Fatal Push. That's an instant to destroy a creature if its converted mana cost is 2 or less, or it has Revolt. So if it has 4 or less, if a permanent I controlled left the battlefield this turn. But I could not run that in Niv Mizzet because of the restrictions I placed on myself. Things like Lulu, Loyal Holophant, which is 3 and a white for a 3/2 Elephant Angel with flying. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control, and then untap them. It lessened the restrictions, but it kept some of the other ones. The main one being that the deck still does not run any fetch lands. And I'll get to that after I get through some of the other stuff that I'm able to run now that I don't have that one restriction. As far as 5 color, we have Okagachi Vengeful Kami, which is 6/6 Dragon Spirit for 1 and WUBRG. It has flying and trample, and when it deals combat damage to a player, if that player attacked you during their last turn, exile target non-land permanent that player controls. Maelstrom Nexus is Wooburg for an enchantment that says the first spell you cast each turn has Cascade. And I like the idea of giving all of our spells Cascade, and then, Jodah also giving our legendary creatures Cascade. I just think it would go very well together. But in terms of 3-color stuff, I just want to go over a few. The first one being Archelos Lagoon Mystic, which is a 2/4 Turtle Shaman for 1 and Sultai. It says, as long as Archelos Lagoon Mystic is tapped, other permanents enter the battlefield tapped. As long as it's untapped, other permanents enter the battlefield untapped. I have this for a few reasons. Some of my lands do have to come in tapped. Not like because they're tap lands, but because they are shock lands, and this can get around that requirement. And, every so often I attack with my no longer a 2/4, but could be like a 5/7 or whatever. And then everything else that my opponents play come into play tapped. We have Rienne, Angel of Rebirth, which is 5/4 Angel for 2 and Naya. As flying, other multicolored creatures you control get +1/+0. And whenever another multicolored creature you control dies, return to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. This does double duty. It does pump anything we have that is more than one color, which is a majority of the creatures in the deck. But also, the main reason it's in there is if anybody tries to just remove Jodah, she is another way I can return it to my hand instead of it going to the command zone. We have Surek Dragonclaw. He is a 6/6 human warrior for 2 and Temur. It has Flash. The spell can't be countered. Creature spells you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have Trample. That was a big thing that I definitely wanted in this deck, is if Jodah's going to make everything big, we need to give it Trample. And then I guess we'll go with 2 more of these. The first one being Amarith the Illustrious, which is a 6/6 dragon for 3 and Bant. It has flying, and whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it shares a card type with that permanent, you may reveal that card and put it into your hand. So, the way this works with Jodah is, say Amarith's out, we cast a legendary creature. On the cast, Jodah says, hey, that's a legendary creature, we're going to flip through the deck to find a lesser mana cost creature. So we reveal until we hit a lesser cost mana cost creature. That one enters the battlefield. Amarith triggers off of that one hitting the battlefield. We look at the next card on top of the library. If it shares a card type, in this case it'd be a creature, that goes into our hand and we reveal it and put it in our hand. Then the first one that we cast hits the battlefield and we do it again. So it's a good way to fill our hand, especially if Jodah is on the battlefield. But speaking of keeping Jodah on the battlefield, this was a great place to put a Nethroi Apex of Death, which is 2 and Abzan for a 5/5 cat nightmare beast. But the important bit here is it has Mutate for 4, a hybrid Selesnya black. It has Death Touch and Lifelink, and whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So there is a lot of high powers in this deck, but the main goal is to get Jodah. So if I have Nethroi in my hand and Jodah's going to die, I can just drop it into the graveyard and know I'll have a way to get it back. Right, now on to the lands. The best part about swapping this over from Niv Mizzet is I really didn't have to change the lands all that much. So I'm still running most of the shock lands. I know I'm missing a few. I'm running most of the... I'm not even sure what we're calling them, but the Battle Bond lands. I have classics like Command Tower. I have most of the pathways from Kaldheim and Zendikar Rising. And then I have some of the more grafted for this deck lands. The first one being the World Tree, which is weird that it's not a legendary land, but it enters tapped. It taps for green. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. And then it has an ability on here that's irrelevant to what I'm doing. There's only, I believe, 1 god in the deck, but you can pay 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 red, 2 green, tap it, and sacrifice it to search your library for any number of god cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. We're running a Mana Confluence, which is just a slightly worse Command Tower. It's a land, enters untapped, you can tap it, pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. And then we have the Mega Filter lands. First one being Crystal Quarry. It's a land, it taps for a colorless, or you can pay 5 and tap it to make Wooburg. And then we have Cascading Cataracts, which is a land with Indestructible. It taps for a colorless, and again, you can pay 5 and tap it to add 5 mana in any combination of colors. So, that's what the deck became, and I hope to play it soon, but with the way things are going, I don't currently have a car, so I'm not going to be home because I have to go stay with my aunt so she can give me a ride to work in the morning. Yeah. Things are great. Did I mention I've hit 2 deer in like the span of a month and a half? Alright. Well, that's going to be it. I'm back. The podcast should be back on a normal schedule, barring any other thing going wrong. And, I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.